everybody, hope you're doing well. This week's video is going to be my first impressions of Life is Strange Reunion. I spent all day playing through the game, my first playthrough is officially done, and I have a lot to say. Now, of course, in the past with my review of Life is Strange Double Exposure, I've gone back and I'm not exactly happy about how I went about that. I was really focused on getting the video out quickly and wanting to be able to hop on, the hype of the game and all those things, that I kind of allowed it to compromise the way I did my research and the research I should have done, which led to me giving a review that I don't really agree with looking back, and I've put a big disclaimer on that video. And I'm not going to make the same mistake twice, which is why we're going to have two separate videos, kind of similar to how I did it with Lost Records, Bloom and Rage, where I had a sort of first impressions slash playthrough one video and then my follow-up, which was my full review. So of course, one playthrough in, what do I think of the game? What do I think of Chloe returning, Max, all these things? I have a lot to say. So first off, let's start with some basic housekeeping stuff. First off, the graphics. I think overall the graphics are in the same ballpark as Double Exposure. Like, it obviously uses the same engine, a lot of the same assets, things like that. However, one of my major complaints about Double Exposure, especially trying to replay it recently, is there's a lot of graphical glitches. There's this sort of stuttering kind of effect with faces not matching up with the bodies and things looking blurry when they really shouldn't. And it's just kind of a hassle to finagle the graphic settings to make it look good, which thankfully was not an issue with Reunion. Right out of the gate, it looked fantastic, and the only times I messed with it were for performance on my computer, but visually it looked great and I encountered no bugs in that realm. The only graphical glitches I did encounter were basic things like before switching to a loading screen, a flash would appear, or during the end of the game, I would see certain characters jitter into place because of how many different endings there are. The soundtrack is also very, very good. I have no complaints about the soundtrack. It's not one that really sticks out in my opinion, but when it does show up, it serves the scenes very, very well, and the artists they include in it are fantastic. You can't really complain about this soundtrack. So first off, what did I enjoy? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is simply having Max and Chloe back in the same room together. While of course we don't have Ashley Birch, we do have Hannah Telle and Rihanna DeVries coming in to play these roles, and I really think the chemistry is spot on. I think the writing between those two in those individual scenes works really, really well. And the best parts of the game are when we see them together, solving problems, solving puzzles, doing all sorts of things like that. That is when the game is at its strongest, and it really comes down to the performances. With the exception of some background characters, I can't really think of a bad performance. Hannah Telle is great as always, and once again, Max is written in a way that feels realistic to her and feels like she has actually grown and changed when we're not looking, unlike some other series where you go to the sequel and the character is either exactly the same or has regressed in some way. Although she still does have her compulsions to want to go back and fix things constantly, which kind of get reignited by the return of Chloe. But I think that makes sense, especially for the kind of character she is written as. Of course, Rihanna turns in a great performance as Chloe. Everybody knows I'm a big fan of Before the Storm and that rendition of Chloe and that game in general. So of course, I'm more than happy to have her back in the role, and they absolutely knock it out of the park. But the performances work really well, and at times are even pretty powerful. With the writing is both a positive and a negative, and I'll get to that in the negative section in a bit, but the positive side of things, the individual scenes with characters, particularly Chloe and Max, very well done, very entertaining. The individual set pieces are pretty well done, and I have to say, the overall mystery, like your goal at the end of the game, like what you're trying to figure out, the fire that you're trying to prevent, I think is handled very, very well. And it feels a lot more intuitive and interesting than what we got in Double Exposure. I think overall, at least on this first playthrough, the writing is a big step forward from Double Exposure. Now granted, something I have to mention is that a lot of these characters we were introduced to in Double Exposure, so without double exposure, we would have had a much slower start to this game because we would have had to get to know everybody. So it's kind of a necessary evil to these games. As a pair, I think they're pretty good. But I do think that the main storyline is a lot stronger in this one. A big compliment I can also give, as someone who sees Max and Chloe as best friends reuniting and Chloe still being in love with Rachel and being unable to move on, at least in the first game, I was very happy that while the moments for them to rekindle their relationship were there, it didn't feel forced. There were no moments, at least in my playthrough, where it felt like the game wanted me to do that. This was supposed to be a conversation that happens after that, and it's supposed to feel that way, but then you feel weird because that's not the choice you made. It's an issue that came up with Dispatch where if you didn't make certain choices, certain conversations wouldn't make sense because the game wanted to say a certain thing at a certain time rather than reacting to the player. I have to say, as someone who is likely in the minority when it comes to the relationship of Max and Chloe and the backstory for them within this game, I think they did a fantastic job of working it in the story and making it feel worthwhile and making it feel organic and not like it was the wrong choice. And it makes me excited to replay it and try it with the romance and see if I kind of like it, because honestly, their relationship, I feel like them dating now that they've grown and changed and matured in so many different ways, would work really well. So we'll see. I'm going to replay it, do a bunch of different things, and let you know. I also really liked the shot composition within the game, which might sound silly to compliment, but these games overall are like movies / TV shows. I mean, they used to be organized in episodes and things like that. And I think this one did a great job with the camera work. Even though there isn't a real camera, I think they did a great job of conveying emotions through the camera, and they didn't have to rely on narration as much. Like, they still do, but there's certain sequences of paranoia or even comedic bits, and even the more ethereal, kind of out-of-the-box ideas are shown very, very well using the camera and framing and things like that. And that's something I personally appreciated. I'm glad they had some kind of director flair in there, which in a lot of video games I feel like some people forget about. Especially narrative games like these, where a lot of the time it's just two characters talking to each other. And my final major thing that I liked about the game is kind of tentative. This is something I'm going to have to come back and explore when I do my replay and then I do my full review later. But just when I got to the end, looking at all the variations of endings, in this game there isn't a typical big moment where you choose somebody dying, somebody living, yada yada yada. In this one, it's really more of a culmination of your actions, at least the way I'm seeing it, and also what you choose to investigate and how you choose to investigate it. Because I was really pleasantly surprised when I was scrolling through the ending, seeing what I got, what I hadn't got, things like that, just how many variations there were. And then also that there were seemingly plot lines with individual characters that I personally didn't scratch the surface of. Now, maybe it's because they're hidden behind certain prerequisites. For example, it showed me that I missed some stuff with Vin, and in this playthrough, I set Vin and Max's relationship to not romantic. So it's possible that I was missing out on something because of that. Maybe I missed an item. I'm not really sure because I felt like I was very thorough throughout my playthrough. I didn't speed run it. But either way, that just makes me excited to go back and replay it and see what I missed and what that will add to the ending. I was also pleasantly surprised with the variations in the ending. I almost thought, with all this talk throughout the narrative of the fire being inevitable, things like that, I thought that it was always going to happen. Everything was always going to happen, and it was going to end exactly the same way. But according to the ending slides, you can figure out and prevent some of the fires, right? I just had to double check the ending slides that I took pictures of. But yeah, it appears that you can stop some of the fires and things like that. And so I was very surprised by that because I felt like it was going to be one of those kind of railroaded situations where no matter what, it's gonna happen and you just have to deal with it even if you get it right. Or maybe even if you get it right, the culprit changes, because it felt like they were kind of building to that, and that's where I saw it going. But ultimately I was, once again, very pleasantly surprised to see in the ending that, like, yeah, you can stop those things, and I just wasn't that great of an investigator my first time through. So that's something that is, once again, a big step forward from Double Exposure and also from the series as a whole. I feel like most Life is Strange games usually come down to a big choice. Life is Strange 1, Before the Storm, they come down to two very big choices. And there is a big choice in this game, but it's more of a, you know, what happens next in your personal headcanon kind of choice, not necessarily something that affects the climax. But we saw in True Colors there was some variation depending on how the townsfolk viewed you in the final sequence. And in Life is Strange 2, obviously your moral compass and Daniel, depending on if you're conflicting or if you're on the same side, things like that can lead to a lot of different endings with them. So of course when Double Exposure came out and it had that kind of lackluster ending where it felt like nothing really happened in the end and there weren't any major choices or consequences, I was very pleasantly surprised that it seems like there's so much variation in terms of what fires you can stop, who's going to survive, what do you know about who. It's just very interesting to me, and I'm glad that it's something that was considered and added. Now, with the things that I disliked, this game to me, at least upon my first playthrough, was a very up and down experience. There were great moments, there were great scenes, but then there were other scenes that were just kind of baffling to me at times, where I was just like, what is going on right now? I know I made fun of it in my gameplay review earlier, but you've got to like disable bombs at one point, which genuinely that does come back in an interesting way, and I think the way the fire is handled as almost an inevitability is interesting, and how it kind of changes over time. Because in one timeline where Max isn't there, it's caused by a certain character death, and then in another one, it's not caused by that, and you can still find a way to prevent it. So for every like really interesting and cool thing like that, it was like, it just felt like things kind of came out of nowhere at times. There were a lot of convenient loose ends from Double Exposure just tied up so we wouldn't have to worry about it. They invented this storm amnesia thing where unless a character is constantly reminded that, hey, you experienced two different realities, here's what happened, unless they're reminded of that, it doesn't really matter. They forget about it. So your love interest, whether it's Vin or Amanda, completely forget about what happened, and also the fact that Max had powers. All they know is that you two broke up, which they also break up off screen. That was something I wasn't a fan of. Ironically, I know I've talked about Chloe and Max breaking up off screen and how, oh, it makes sense. I think just for the purpose of this story, having Chloe be such a fish out of water, having Chloe be something from the past coming to the future, and then Max has moved on and moved further so much that she has a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever, I felt like it would have been useful to have them have a relationship, but I also understand how much variation would have had to be considered for it and how that could be a challenge. So I wasn't heartbroken over it, but it definitely was something that rubbed me the wrong way at first. There was one moment that was a little confusing to me, and I know I'm trying to be light on spoilers in this, but there's a moment with Safi that kind of implies that in the final weird dream sequence of Double Exposure, that Max sees Chloe, and then somehow through that is what merges the timelines and brings her back. So that was kind of weird considering we didn't see that moment, really. Like, we saw the weird recreation of the bathroom death, but I don't know, it just felt out of nowhere. Maybe my brain is fried because I played it all in one sitting so I could get ready for this trip I'm going on, but I don't know. Just things like that, these odd low moments out of nowhere, like the random addition of just like, we're doing new powers, now she can hear colors and see music. Like, it just feels so out of nowhere with some of these moments. However, they're used well, they're used effectively, but then again, it's like, hey, if you set up the rules of the world, you should be able to work within them. Restraints create creativity. So on one hand, like, the moments are cool, but on the other hand, it's like, you establish what she can do, so why just invent something new instead of coming up with an interesting way for her to learn this information or figure this out, you know? My other thing is, I feel like Safi was underutilized. There were so many moments where she was talking about being Max's best friend and how her and Chloe were the two sides of the same coin, which was interesting, and the performances were incredible, but I just found myself, like, not really feeling it because, you know, I haven't seen that much of Safi and Max together, and so it didn't really land as well for me, and I'm sure that affected the ending I got for Safi initially, things like that. My final real complaint, I guess, because this is a very brief video, this is very brief first impressions, because I want to give you guys a full 40 to an hour long review where I talk about individual plot points and different outcomes and different endings and things like that, where I give you my real opinions. This is just a first impressions, like I said. So my final thing is really just, you know, why is Chloe back now, of all times? Because the story itself could work with original characters, and there are moments in the story that could possibly work better with original characters. I do think Chloe and Safi's relationship is interesting, and I do love how Moses and Chloe interact. I thought that was very well done and well written. It's just there are times where I was wondering, I was like, why does Chloe need to be back? Why does this need to be a Max and Chloe story when this could have been a unique new character that we could have gone way more in depth on? We could have used these new creative powers instead of having to kind of find ways to make Max's powers fit exactly what we need. And one last thing I want to say before we end off with this kind of shorter video is, so this final thing is something that isn't necessarily a pro or a con, it's more of a concern, and it's something that I'm going to have to address in my next playthrough and then finally in my final review. But that is that, obviously I chose to sacrifice Chloe over Arcadia Bay. That's something I've talked about a lot, and it works really, really well in this story. It works really, really well because on one hand, you have Chloe who remembers traveling with Max, remembers being with Max and all these things, but now suddenly it never happened. This isn't the same Max. And it brings up a lot of existential questions. And that ultimately culminates with the final choice of the game, where you have to think as Chloe, you're not Max in that moment. You're thinking, hey, what happens to all of us when Max does this and changes reality? It makes you wonder that. And I think with Chloe being dead in the prime timeline, her questioning reality and her not knowing how to feel and the confusion and the paranoia that comes with that, especially with Safi. The moments between Safi and Chloe that work so well is when they both acknowledge, like, hey, we should be dead. We are in very similar situations and we both don't know how to feel about it. Should we both accept it, or are we ghosts or whatever? But then that made me ask the question, what is it like for the other side, where Chloe is alive in the prime timeline? Specifically in the scenes that we saw in the gameplay, we do get to see that conversation and comparing them. It's just them talking about their relationship versus in the version I played through, it was this very intense conversation about, am I a ghost? What does it mean to be alive? Does it even really matter? Are we the same people that we were? It was just very intense and emotionally raw. And then compared to the dating one, while it was emotional in its own way, it just didn't feel like it landed as well. And it makes me wonder, with just how many moments they reference how Chloe should be dead, how this is an anomaly, how this isn't the way things should be, I just wonder how that would work when technically in those timelines where Chloe is alive, Max and Chloe dated and went on the road together, and that's the reality, that's the prime timeline for Max. I just wonder how that's gonna work, because in reality, that's the normal thing. The normal thing is that Chloe is alive. And it just makes me wonder if, you know, a large chunk of the Life is Strange audience, which saved Chloe over Arcadia Bay, if they're gonna be disappointed with this game because of the direction the writers wanted to go. I don't know. It's more of a curiosity than anything, and more of a concern, because I loved how it was handled in this game with Chloe being dead in the prime timeline. And it just makes me wonder what differences, what steps were taken in order to address that, in order to change it, but still have some meaning and some different way of connecting the dots where those conversations would have occurred. So I don't know. I guess I will see when I replay it. I'm very excited to replay it because it was a fun experience. I feel like Double Exposure, I tried replaying it recently and it was just a lot slower. It took a little more time to get going. Whereas with this one, I feel like it has the benefit of being a sequel where you know the characters already, you know the world, you can just jump right in and start doing things. So it definitely benefits from that, and I think it's going to be, I think overall it's a better experience and a better game than Double Exposure. But I don't want to commit to any major opinions yet. Like I said, I haven't replayed it, and if they fumble the ball on some of the variations in the endings or in the variations between, you know, which timeline is the prime timeline, is Chloe alive or is she dead in the main timeline, I'm sure that will change my opinion of things. Because like I said, I don't want to make the same mistake I did before where I played it once, I only saw how I wanted to see it and I thought it was great, and then I didn't bother to do my research, which was wrong of me. So I'm really trying to be cautious about that this time around. I hope you guys appreciate that. So we'll see. My full opinion is pending, but on a first playthrough, I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was a good experience overall. There are definitely moments that are not silly, because there's silly moments that are good, but just kind of dumb moments where I'm like, okay, sure, I guess, where you kind of have to just accept what's going on. But then again, it's time travel, it's crazy stuff, you can kind of forgive it. But then again, you know, you have Life is Strange 2, where you've got a very serious set of rules and a very serious story that doesn't have those ridiculous moments that you just have to accept. So it depends on what kind of bar you're holding for this. I think if you're a fan of Max and Chloe and you're looking for a fun, emotional experience, I think this is a good game for you, and I enjoyed it because of that. Is it exactly, you know, Oscar-winning writing and things like that? That remains to be seen for when I replay it to see how they handle certain variations, but I thought it was solid, like an above-average experience. Have you guys played Reunion yet? What do you think of it? Is this the end for Max and Chloe? Because it does kind of leave things so open with all these different endings, so kind of leaves it up in the air. Maybe they'll do another comic series, something like that. So, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I hope you are okay with me doing a shorter first impressions kind of video and then waiting a little bit for my full review. I'm sorry, but trust me, this full review will be worth it. It's going to be a long video where I discuss individual plot lines, individual choices, and do a lot of stuff related to the different variations so I can give this game as accurate of a grade and rating as I possibly can. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope you have a good morning or evening or, you know, whatever.